Hi, everyone. Okay, today we are going to be talking about chapter 7 mostly, but maybe a little bit of chapter 8 too, because those two chapters are so closely connected. They're all kind of about relationship issues and various media contexts. I really like to talk about them together, and you'll see that these slides are all just sort of like one big mush of slide. But I'm going to try to divide up this lecture into like two little bits at least, but they'll be pulling from the same set of slides. If you don't understand that, I don't think it'll matter. We'll be fine. So before we even talk about media, I just want to talk about us, humanity. Humans are a social species. So you know how some animals seem to flock together. I like my chickens, they're social, they like to be together, like they like to sleep together, they like to fight with each other, where other animals are a little bit more solitary, I hear that tigers are kind of solitary, but like lions are not, right? Like lions have a pride, whatever. So we fall into the social species category. Like we really like have a need to be around other people, or at least be aware of other people, for those of you introverts out there. And our brains are hardwired to sort of seek connections to other people. This is why I always think, like, have you ever seen like a picture of a face and a piece of toast or something? Or you know how cars kind of look like faces? Or oh, my favorite is those little hooks that people have on their wall, how it looks like an octopus, like with like two eyes, like whatever. The fact that we're able to sort of see uh, people, or people-like qualities in inanimate objects, is because like that's what our brain is like wired to do. Um, and we're very closely related to monkeys and other primates. And there's a famous experiment called Harlow's wire cloth monkey experiment, where and it's sad. And if you want to watch the video, because you'll hear like little baby monkeys crying, if go ahead and click on it when you download the PowerPoint slides on eCampus, and you can like see this experiment set up. But basically, he had these baby monkeys, and you see here, like there's clearly this thing that kind of looks like a monkey, but like not really, and it's got some like cloth on it and stuff like that. So what he did was he put one of these in a cage, and then he gave and then he had one of these that was like just a piece of wire, but it had food in it. Because what he wanted to see is like, okay, will the baby monkey go towards the warm mother that they can cuddle onto, or will the baby monkey go towards the uncomfortable mother that it provides them food? And they chose comfort over food. Like they just chose the other monkey because they wanted to, anyway, it's just an interesting example of sort of how, like, again, it's like it's like the thing that we want the most is sociality. Like we want to be around people. Drawing from that principle is what's called the media equation. And this, to answer the question in your test, is the media equation. Media equals real life. We are hardwired to seek out social things, but we're also hardwired to respond to social things in the media as if it's real. We know cognizantly that it's like not, that if I'm interacting with you through a screen, that there is a screen there, but that doesn't mean that I can't experience you as being in my space. In other words, another way of thinking about it, like I have down here, Stone Age brain, space age tech. We're hardwired to respond to other humans, but our brains haven't really developed enough to sort of understand technology. I mean, we understand it, but we don't perceive the world through technology all the time. So this is why we're going to talk about this later, although it's in your chapter. Sometimes, have you ever had the feeling that you feel like close to somebody, like a character? Oh, here's a good example. If you feel close to a character in a book, okay, like the character might even be fictional, but you feel close to them as if you have a relationship, even though they're not even real. Like that's part of the media equation. It's not abnormal. On the contrary, it's very normal, because again, our brains are hardwired to be social, and they don't really account for what technology is. They just do what they're supposed to do, which is connect to other people. Another great example, there is I mean, this is actually here. This is why people yell at their technology too, or you attribute, like, if your car is like having a bad day, you'll say like, oh, she's having a bad day. Like and it's like kind of a joke, but you are attributing like female human characteristics to an inanimate object media equation, right? We kind of see everything like that. Another great example is there was a study where they asked people to go in and touch a robot's private parts. They're like, yeah, just put your hand there. And people were really uncomfortable with it. And it doesn't really make sense because it's a robot and its private parts are really not private. But again, because we sort of relate to these inanimate technological objects as if they are real life, it still feels strange to us to molest a robot. So I think that's a good thing, though. It relates to our humanity. Presence is a important word, and the type of research that my people do, the media psychologists, we're always interested in like, okay, well, what are the characteristics that enhance that feeling of non-mediation? So, when I was saying, yeah, you can be in a Zoom meeting with somebody and you can feel like you kind of forget that you are divided by a screen for a minute. I mean, maybe Zoom isn't the best answer, but we've talked about that also with telephones. Like, you could be talking to somebody on the phone and sort of temporarily lose awareness that there's anything dividing you. You feel as if they're there. That is a feeling of presence. You feel their presence. Telepresence is just sort of like a tack onto that, which is an illusion of non-mediation. It's like, something's mediated, but you don't really process that, right? Presence is somewhat relative. Like, not everybody is going to feel presence in the same types of contexts. It's like a psychological characteristic. Some people are more prone to feel presence than others, but presence is also something that can be increased or decreased by different types of characteristics in the technology. So the more cues or like nonverbal cues, for instance, like, well, here's an example. In theory, if you had an opportunity to have a phone meeting with somebody or a FaceTime meeting with somebody, technically the FaceTime meeting might give you more presence because you could see more of the person. It would make them feel more like they're there. However, let's say there was disruptions in the connection, right? Things to remind you that it was really mediated, like there was static or something like that. In that case, the phone conversation might be better than the FaceTime conversation. And again, as I said before, part of this is psychological, so it just kind of depends on the user themselves. If we were in class and we needed to do activities, I'd go through each one of these and we'd talk about like different aspects of presence, like how much presence does Siri have? Do you feel like when your digital assistant is talking to you, like that it's like a real sort of entity, or like they're with you? Another great example, if you've ever seen, this is an old movie, it's really old, but it's a great example. It's a Castaway. It's about like a guy who gets like deserted on an island and he doesn't have any people around, so he puts a face on a volleyball and that volleyball feels like it's his friend. The volleyball has presence. So sometimes it's really as simple as just being able to have sort of a human marking on something to make it have a little bit of presence. Okay, now we're going to move into sort of tech for relationship development. We're going to be talking a lot about romantic relationships, but this doesn't only apply to romantic relationships. And one of the things I want to remind everyone is, like, well before the internet was a place where people would, meet to hook up, we used media for relationship development all the time. Think about like just letters and stuff, like the good old Jane Austen types of stuff where, people would use snail mail and connect with each other through writing and things like that. Think about mixtapes. I mean, this is like my generation, but has anybody, I mean, now you could have like a playlist or something, right? But still, like, the idea that somebody would sort of use a piece of technology to exchange messages that would help with relational maintenance. Now, of course, we have actual like dating sites and hookup sites and things like that. So the internet is like a big site for that. But I did like sort of want to point out that we've always used our media to cultivate our connections with others. And the truth is like most of the relationships that we consider online relationships are probably not online relationships. They're relationships that we have offline that we maintain through our media. Now, are there relationships that exist solely online? Of course. I love bringing up, you know, uh, digital games for this. A lot of people have very close connections with people that they've never met before, but they've spent hours and hours and hours with, playing different games with, or maybe in some of the specialized groups and things like that where they meet certain people. But most relationships that you have online probably exist somewhere in the offline, like you've had some sort of face-to-face contact at some point, or you probably will. Um, so, your book has all this stuff about tech design for relational use. Sorry, move my thing. Dating sites is what we're talking about now. And it's fun for me to teach dating sites to college students because most of you probably haven't had a lot of experience with dating sites, although this is going to be something you have an opportunity to maybe write about for a discussion board post. So I'll figure out if that's still true or not. But dating sites are a very popular way of trying to find other people from all over the place, right? It's not just like you're limited to your church or your, I don't know, bowling league or whatever, right? Dating sites have allowed us to sort of find people from all over the place. And of course they've, and honestly, this is like a really outdated number. It's probably like way more than 120,000 marriages. But the reason I like to teach it to undergrads is because I find that there's a little bit of a stigmatization around using them. Like people aren't, even if they do use them, a lot of people your age usually, and I'm sorry if I'm putting everybody in the same age category. I know different people, but the typical undergraduate age, let me put it like that. People in the typical undergraduate student age don't use a lot of dating sites. And they're a little bit embarrassed to admit if they do. And I think there's sort of this perception that if you use a dating site, it must mean like there's something wrong with you because you can't meet somebody in person. And I think, that's definitely an accurate assumption. Remember, we talked about in the last lecture, rich get richer. This applies to online too. Usually people who are like really socially gifted are not just socially gifted offline, they're socially gifted online too. So they're gonna be able to meet people in whatever context that they're in. They're gonna be like good at online dating or in-person dating. But the other thing is, I think that there's sort of this assumption that, oh, if you meet somebody online, you're going to get catfished. Like there's going to be some sort of element of deception. And the other thing is, I think that there's this possible, I'll get back to I'm going to get back to the deception point in a second, but I also think that there's, when you're in college or high school, it's very easy to meet a lot of people like yourself because you're in an environment that encourages that. On college, you have, on campus, you have all different types of opportunities to gravitate towards people who are like you, different clubs and different extramurals and things like that, right? Whereas when you're grown up, if you will, and you just have a day job and you have to sit in front of a computer all day and the only social activities you get out are just like going out with the people who are in your existing network, it's really helpful to have online sources for dating. But anyway, okay, so back to the deception thing. Okay, so yeah, another reason people don't like to date online, or it's a little stigmatized, is that factor of like, oh, there are these creeps out there and people are just going to lie about themselves and stuff like that. Well, the thing is like, yeah, maybe there's some dishonesty, and we'll talk about why in a second, that happens in online contexts in general, not just dating sites. But research suggests that people are actually more likely to lie offline. In other words, if you count the number of lies that somebody you meet online tells you versus the, I don't know, the wonderful person you just met in like the club, the club person is actually more likely to lie. I think the difference is like, it's harder to lie about physical attributes in face-to-face, contexts, but that doesn't mean it's not, you can't lie about other things. And one of the reasons actually that people are less likely to lie in online contexts is because there's a lot of affordances online that make it more difficult for people to lie. For instance, people can go back and look at interactions. You can screenshot things, you can save different interactions and go back. You don't have that ability. I mean, you could take your Apple Watch and record every, you know, um, every interaction you have, like when you're out at the bar or like whatever. But the point is, it's easier to go back and fact check people's stories online. So people have to be more careful about what they say. And also, when people are communicating online, it's usually asynchronous. People have, even if you're just texting somebody, you have delays that allow you to think about what you're going to say and be more accurate and precise. Whereas when you're just sort of like talking on the fly, face to face, synchronously, people are more likely to maybe fudge the truth or say things that aren't necessarily always accurate. And for when people do lie, when people do tell, like, they stretch the truth, there's certain reasons they do it, but it's usually not malicious. One is just impression management, right? We tend to exaggerate our good our good features, our good qualities. We want to like highlight that positive information about ourselves and suppress negative information just because we want to put our best face forward. It's not outright lying. The other reason people might lie or deceive others online is not because they are liars, but it's just because it's how they see themselves. This is called the foggy mirror. It's like, yeah, when you come out of the shower and there's all this steam and like you can see like an outline of yourself, but you really don't see yourself that clearly. Some people sort of walk around with a foggy mirror perception of themselves. So they might tell you one thing about themselves, or they might put it on their dating profile. But the truth is, it's not because they're trying to like trick somebody. It's just because they don't have a lot of self-awareness about how they actually are. I mean, I think about this with weight all the time. It's like sometimes you still see yourself as being like, 10 pounds. Well, if you haven't had this experience yet, hopefully you never will. But I've had an experience where I was like, okay, I know I've gained some weight, but I'm kind of used to seeing myself a certain way. So then I see a picture from when I was like 10 pounds lighter, and I was like, whoa, I didn't know I look like this now. Like, I obviously knew I look like this, but I didn't know I had changed, right? So it's not foggy mirror. And then finally, some people, especially on dating sites where the relationship starts off online and then it moves offline, people think that they have a little time to change. So what's the harm if I tell you that I'm 5 pounds under what I actually am, because I'm sure by the time we meet, I can lose those 5 pounds and it'll be true. Or, like tell people that I'm a non-smoker because I'm planning on quitting, or tell people, like all these different examples of where you're kind of telling people your aspiration instead of what's actually true. Again, the point is like, not that a lot of the deception that happens online is not malicious. It's not people out to get you. It's just sort of like human nature deception type stuff. On that note, I'm going to stop here and we will pick up the stuff on catfishing for the next lecture. So, okay, bye.